Who builds a machine designed to change the way human beings feel? Not a temple, not a monument, a machine. Imagine standing inside a circle of stone just before sunset. Drumming begins somewhere in the distance. The sound moves strangely, not echoing, not fading, but wrapping around you. Something shifts. Your breathing slows. Your chest feels heavier. You feel something you cannot explain. Not because someone told you to, not because you believe in anything, but because the structure itself is doing something to you. And here's the problem. According to everything we think we know about ancient history, none of this should be possible. Stonehenge was never supposed to be built by engineers or mathematicians or people who understood how sound affects the human mind. It was supposed to be primitive, a ceremonial site built by Neolithic farmers doing their best with limited tools. That's the story we inherited. But the deeper researchers looked into Stonehenge, the stranger the story became, because the monument doesn't behave like something primitive. It behaves like something planned, something precise, something built with a purpose we may have misunderstood for 5,000 years. And if that purpose is what some researchers now suspect, then Stonehenge may never have been a monument at all. It may have been something else, something designed to influence the people standing inside it, maybe even control them. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why one of the most famous structures on Earth may have been doing something far stranger than anyone imagined. Because Stonehenge doesn't begin with stone, it begins with intention. Long before the giant standing rocks arrived, someone deliberately chose this exact location. The earliest version of Stonehenge wasn't even built from stone, just a circular ditch, an embankment, and wooden posts. Simple. But even then, something unusual was already happening. The builders aligned the site to the midsummer sunrise and the midwinter sunset. From the very beginning, think about that for a second. Before the giant stones, before the monument, before anything recognizable existed, someone already knew exactly where everything would eventually go. That doesn't feel improvised. It feels planned, as if whoever designed this place already understood something everyone else didn't. And then the stones arrived, not from nearby, not from the closest source, from impossibly far away. The famous blue stones of Stonehenge weigh up to 4 tons each, and somehow 5,000 years ago, people transported around 80 of them more than 150 miles from Wales. No engines, no roads, no cranes, just stone, mud, and human labor. For decades, archaeologists treated this as Stonehenge's biggest mystery. How did they move the stones? Wooden sledges, rafts, human chains? But what if everyone was asking the wrong question? Because maybe the real mystery was never how they moved the stones. Maybe the real mystery was, why would these exact stones worth moving at all? Why travel 150 miles when easier stone existed nearby? Why choose these specific rocks? And this is where the story begins to stop making sense. Because researchers eventually discovered something unusual about the blue stones. They ring, literally. Strike certain stones and they resonate almost like metal, like instruments. And suddenly, the impossible transport starts feeling less irrational. Because maybe they weren't moving random rocks. Maybe they were selecting something very specific, components for a system no one had recognized yet. And if that sounds strange, what comes next makes Stonehenge even harder to explain. Because once researchers stopped focusing only on how the monument was built, they started asking a different question. What exactly was it designed to do? The deeper they looked, the more patterns they found hiding in plain sight. Stonehenge wasn't arranged randomly. From the very beginning, the builders aligned it to the midsummer sunrise and the midwinter sunset with extraordinary precision. Even before the largest stones arrived, the plan already existed. This wasn't trial and error, it was intention. But the monument appears to encode more than one system at once. The famous station stones form alignments linked not only to the sun, but also to a lunar cycle that repeats roughly every 18 years. Think about what that means. You don't observe something like that by accident. Someone had to track the sky for decades, possibly generations. Someone had to preserve that knowledge and ensure construction continued long after the original builders were gone. And suddenly, Stonehenge stops feeling primitive, because primitive projects do not survive for centuries with this level of continuity. This feels coordinated, planned, almost as if knowledge was being protected by a small group who understood something everyone else didn't. And then, in 2024, researchers discovered something that made the story even stranger. At the very center of Stonehenge lies something many visitors barely notice: the altar stone. Flat, quiet, unremarkable. But chemical analysis revealed something unexpected. The stone didn't come from nearby Wales as previously assumed. It came from northeastern Scotland, more than 460 miles away. Someone deliberately transported a 6-ton stone across almost the entire length of Britain and placed it at the exact center of the monument. Not the nearest stone, not the easiest stone, the one they specifically wanted. That changes everything. Isolated farming tribes do not casually organize logistics networks spanning hundreds of miles. Someone had authority, someone had resources, someone had enough influence to coordinate labor across generations toward a single objective. And the question becomes impossible to ignore. What was important enough to justify all of this effort? Before we go further, if mysteries like this are exactly the kind of thing that make you question everything we thought we knew about history, subscribe now, hit that like button, and turn on the notifications, because what happens next makes Stonehenge look far less like a monument and far more like something we were never supposed to fully understand. Because researchers eventually realized something strange about the stones themselves. The builders weren't just choosing rocks that looked impressive, they were choosing rocks that behaved differently, and that changes the story completely. The blue stones of Stonehenge do something unusual. Strike certain ones and they ring. They resonate almost like metal, producing sounds that travel differently than ordinary rock. At first, this seemed like little more than an interesting coincidence, but coincidences become harder to believe when patterns begin stacking on top of each other. Because the larger sarsen stones surrounding the monument appear to behave differently. Instead of amplifying sound, they absorb and contain it. One type of stone projects, another contains. Suddenly, Stonehenge starts looking less like decoration and more like a system. Acoustic researchers, including Professor Rupert Till, modeled the monument as it likely stood thousands of years ago. What they found was unexpected. Inside the completed stone circle, sound behaved differently. It didn't scatter chaotically. It wrapped around the listener, immersive, controlled. Someone standing inside Stonehenge would have experienced sound in a way fundamentally different from someone outside it. Now imagine this 5,000 years ago. Nightfall, firelight, drumming begins. The blue stones resonate. Sound moves around you in ways you have never experienced before. No cathedrals exist, no concert halls. Nothing in your world sounds remotely like this. To the people standing inside Stonehenge, the experience would have felt impossible, supernatural, and maybe that was exactly the point. But audible sound may have been only part of the system. Because beneath human hearing exists something stranger, infrasound, frequencies too low to fear but not too low to feel. Modern studies show certain frequencies can trigger discomfort, awe, altered breathing, emotional shifts, even the sensation that something invisible is nearby. Not belief, physics. And suddenly a disturbing possibility emerges. What if Stonehenge wasn't simply designed to impress people? What if it was designed to physically affect them? Because when researchers modeled how drumming, chanting, and wind interacted with the monument's structure, something unusual appeared. The spacing and dimensions of the stones naturally amplified frequencies associated with changes in human physiological response, elevated heart rate, altered breathing, emotional shifts, not randomly, predictably. Think about what that means. Someone wasn't simply stacking rocks. Someone may have been engineering an experience. And if the structure could influence how people felt inside it, then Stonehenge stops looking like a place of worship and starts looking like something much harder to explain, a machine designed to shape belief itself. And this is where the standard explanation begins to collapse, because if Stonehenge could influence human experience, even slightly, then the mystery changes completely. The question is no longer how they built it. The question becomes, who benefits from it? Construction lasted for more than 1,000 years, longer than any single person could ever see completed. Projects like this don't survive on inspiration alone. They survive through continuity, through preserved knowledge, through people ensuring the plan continues generation after generation, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. Stonehenge may not have been a communal project at all. It may have been controlled by a small elite, people with knowledge of astronomy, seasonal cycles, sound, and human perception, knowledge powerful enough to shape belief itself. Think about what power looked like 5,000 years ago. No armies in the modern sense, no propaganda, no prisons. But imagine controlling a place capable of creating an experience no one could explain, a place where sound moves through the body, where firelight dances across impossible stones, where people leave believing they encountered something greater than themselves. You wouldn't need force. The experience itself becomes authority. And then there is one final detail almost nobody talks about. Stonehenge doesn't point toward a famous constellation, not Orion, not Sirius. Instead, its axis appears directed towards something stranger, an empty region of sky, a void. Researchers still debate why. Symbolism? Astronomy? Something we still don't understand? No one knows. But after everything else, the planning, the impossible transport, the acoustics, randomness becomes harder to believe. And Stonehenge is not alone. Across the ancient world, similar patterns appear again and again. Structures with strange acoustics, sacred sites aligned to celestial cycles, places designed to create experiences people could feel but never explain. Different cultures, different continents, yet strangely familiar ideas. And suddenly, Stonehenge stops looking ancient because the idea itself never disappeared. Architecture still shapes emotion, sound still alters perception, environments still influence behavior. Today we call it psychology, engineering, design, but 5,000 years ago they may have been doing the exact same thing with stone. Everything we are taught about Stonehenge assumes primitive people trying to build something meaningful, but the evidence points somewhere stranger: precision planning, deliberate stone selection, long-distance logistics, acoustic engineering. Piece by piece, the monument stops looking accidental and starts looking intentional. Not simply a temple, not simply a calendar, a machine designed to shape perception, designed to create awe, designed to make people feel something they could not explain. And maybe that is why Stonehenge still feels strange today, because whatever the builders intended this place to do, the structure still stands. The wind still moves through the stones, the sound still changes, the experience never completely disappeared. We simply forgot what we were standing inside. And if Stonehenge was only one example of this forgotten technology, then the real question is no longer what Stonehenge was. The real question is, how many other ancient machines are we still calling temples?